Yeah, on record, Tshidi. On record, Tshidi.
Hello, welcome to Politricking with myself, Tshidi Madia. This is episode 13 of season 3 of a politics podcast brought to you by Eyewitness News. So June, the world over, this month, is known as Pride Month. Of course, it's in ode of the Stonewall riots of 1969, where in response to police raids, there was spontaneous protests celebrating and outwardly owning their rights to be queer. This is, of course, by the queer community, the LGBTQI plus community, the Wabita Alphabet Gang. Those in my life know, my Pride people. I think it's important to mark this month, to celebrate this month. Most when you look at the South African picture, because in South Africa, the constitutional protection, the rights are there. When we speak of legislation, it is where it ought to be. However, if you look at members of the community, much like women and children, remain very vulnerable. So these conversations are important. This is not going to be the first time I touch on issues affecting the queer community or what members of the queer community think of who and what we are as a people. I will definitely do it again. I'm very honored, very privileged to be joined by Dr. Bev Ditsie this week. But before you listen to our conversation, I must give my 5 cents on this Paul Mashatile drama that's currently unfolding. News 24's exclusive News 24 series, I think. We're going to see a lot more coming on the deputy president in waiting. And it's stories about just like getting kickbacks, how he lives a life of luxury, sponsored by people who have links and allegations of corruption here and there. You want to call them entrepreneurs, you want to call them businessmen, but ultimately there's these stories about this politician who lives a life of luxury. I always think about the ANC's president, Cyril Ramaphosa, saying that the party is the number one accused for corruption, whatever he said. And it speaks to that, doesn't it? The smaller yana skeletons. So I think you must keep an eye out for that story, because as people who cover politics, I'm not surprised by those allegations at all. Yeah, putting it up, young women, booze, luxurious lifestyles. Nothing about those claims surprise anybody who follows the lives of politicians. That's what I'm going to say. And of course, there's this Ace Magashule stuff happening in the background. Is he going to start a new party? Is he not? Does he want his own moonshot pack to take on the ANC? Does he not? Will he be wearing a red beret? Will he not? Only time will tell. But I do think that Ace Magashule is a spend force. It's like a spend force. I can't see what he's going to do on the ground. That will shake the ground, you know. I think the best time to have done something to show his might was definitely when he was suspended. And ipadile. So now with his expulsion, I'm like, damn squib. But let's wait and see. You never know. They say day in politics is too much. Now back to this week's conversation with Dr. Bev Ditsie. Here it is. I'm very excited about this conversation because, you know, when you have, I think they call them legends in the room, you kind of pause and think a little bit more or think a little bit bigger than your little world. So this month was what we called Pride Month. If you remember, there was like this back and forth with Woolies because, you know, they're allies, like many of us. And it brings back the conversation around human rights, queer rights, whichever way you want to fudge it in essence. But that's part of the conversations that we've been having. So we thought, who best to bring into the room but somebody who understands, who stood up, someone who's made history, right, in the battle of getting particular issues under the spotlight, in fighting for people's human rights, queer rights specifically. I'm very happy to be joined by Dr. Bev Ditsie.
I can't let it go. Kiditsi.
Okay, Ditsie. Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, don't be.
Okay.
A lot of the time we let it go because you know what? If it's, but let me tell you, Ditsie, yeah. I gotta get a locust in Sesotho.
Oh yes.
Ditsie is a different meaning, and
Ditsie.
Kasetswana, it's train tracks from my understanding.
Okay.
Kasesotho, it's a bark of a tree.
Oh.
But now, my gran was lighter than me. And so when she went to go get her ID during apartheid, Akere Afrikaans puts a E at the end of every licky,
Yes.
everything is an E at the end. So they put the E at the end, and we never changed it because as far as we kind of are concerned, it's a conversation.
Okay.
And so
now we've got the right pronunciation.
Yes.
Ditsie. Okay, got it.
Yes.
Not Ditsie. Thank you. Lots of education. Thank you, Dr. Bev Ditsie. I really think what you do is so tremendous. As I said to you offline, it strikes right back home to me in my life. Dr. Bev, thank you so much for joining us. I think back to 1990, the first African Pride March. I think about what I've read about going to a whole United Nations. Like, that's a massive space. And you've made history. But I also think about where this country was then versus now. I'll tell you, when I was in primary school, I was alive at least, I was a child. 1995. But to where we are now, so when you look at South Africa today, as South Africa joins the rest of the universe to celebrate Pride Month, what comes to mind when you look around you versus where you've been and the path you've walked for us to get you?
Yeah, what an interesting question to start.
It's very convoluted, I apologize.
No. But one can't help but reflect. And we're constantly reflecting. 1990, 1995, we were so hopeful. There was such a sense of freedom in the air, and we could define it at the time. We knew what we wanted to see in our futures. We knew that we were shaping a country where all of us would literally be active, equal participants in all sectors of society and making a beautiful country. I think we saw ourselves being what we used to think of the USA as, the land of milk and honey, the land of freedom where everyone would have opportunity to be and do and thrive and be successful. That's what we thought we were going to see.
That's a fallacy. I can tell you that one for free.
And then you look at the USA today and you go, oh, snap. And then you look at where we are in South Africa today as well. It is actually quite frightening for me and for many of us. And I think I speak across the board. I'm not just talking about queer folk. I'm talking about all of us women, all of us black, all of us working people, working class people, or poor people. There are very few people who can say they are thriving and having a wonderful life in South Africa today. And it's it's unfortunate because obviously it sounds very depressing because, we still try to live and have joy, but this is where we are.
It is incredibly depressing. You're thinking about survival and you're not thriving and enjoying supposedly the fruits of democracy. Before I even zero in on the issues of queer advocacy and queer rights, I want to sit a little bit on what you're talking about, where we are as a country now. I actually saw an interview you did in 2019 where you kind of had this very tone. And I thought to myself, she speaks about how frightening it is to be in the country and how it's so concerning that what we dreamt of when we wanted democracy hasn't really come to the fore. That was 2019. In 2023, things feel like they've gotten worse. Do you look around and think there is a way to move the needle back towards where we were, to progress towards the vision we once held? Or does it feel like actually this is it? This is as good as it gets. South Africans have always thought they were an exception. I think they're very wrong. When you look at that, what comes to mind?
We just need leadership. Really, we need thinking, conscious people to step up. Right now, a lot of what's going on has to do with people that have self-interest, and even all these new political parties and everyone else that's coming to the fore. I keep saying, so yes, 40% of the country is made up of youth, and youth is not voting. And if you look at where we are, we are in trouble. But what's the alternatives? Where are the alternatives? Where are the leaders? What's going on? And it's not just a South African thing. I think it's a global phenomenon where, everyone is looking at conservatism as the only way to kind of move forward in the world. And that is very frightening. It's almost as though democracy came and people kind of did whatever they wanted. And now it's like, oh, this democracy is not working for us anymore, And now people are clamoring for dictatorship. That is frightening to me.
What does it take?
Frightening to me.
What does it take to step up? You did it in the 90s when it was unheard of to fight for queer rights, young black South African lesbian person to the world. What does it take? The picture that you're painting needs someone to agitate. What does it take?
I think there's going to be a catalyst. And this is me being like throwing bones. We need like a push. And normally a crisis. Something
what does that look like? 2021 riots were not a crisis. Electricity is not a crisis. The war on women's bodies and children is not a crisis. What does a catalyst look like? I also feel like we're holding in hope, particularly this country, for that one extra thing that will drive us over.
I don't know what that is. I mean, water right now is a crisis. Our lives are a crisis. We are all living just slightly on the edge. There's going to be a push. I think all of us feel it. We all know it. We don't know what it is, but where there's a crisis, a leader or two, somebody emerges. Remember there was a time, sorry, Tshidi. Remember there was when Dr. Rampele came into, like, for just that 1 month, where all of us just said,
a party political platform,
God. We're like, oh, finally an alternative that makes sense. She came out with that 3-point plan, and there was this, that, and the other. The manifesto was the most amazing manifesto I've ever seen.
But it was a month. She was really just there for a month.
It was about a month.
And like a blip, she was gone. I actually remember that period because she was campaigning in areas like, no, she went to Bakersdale on election day with aviator shades on, and no one even noticed her. And I remember looking and going, how did this happen? What happened to black consciousness? I remember that, yeah.
I had a friend who was working for her as like in the publicity and in a department.
It must have been a nightmare.
Friend called and said, May wants to meet you. And I thought, yay, I will be right there when, because I loved everything about that manifesto. And I was very happy to jump on that very quickly, because it was the first time that it felt like here was somebody who stood for all the things that we all agreed.
When you look at the lay of the land, we're going to elections, no one strikes you as a possibility of selling something worth selling to citizens.
Who's emerging above? Who's above? You keep hearing, find all the different parties and find their political manifesto. You know what it feels like? Remember when Love Life came in to fight HIV?
Oh, and they had those I was a baby, but yes, I remember that. Yes,
they had empty speech
bubbles. That was a cool
bubbles.
campaign, yes. No, I don't remember the bubbles, yeah?
When people needed to know what is HIV, how is it transmitted, how can we stop it, all we had were speech bubbles on a billboard. That's what these elections feel like right now. You have people saying things like, there is other parties that exist that are better. Who? Where? Can we not see them? Where are they? That's the empty speech bubble.
That's an empty bubble, yeah.
That feels like that to me.
Dr. Bev, I got into an argument with some of my friends from the community because not too long ago, Uganda obviously clamped down on gay people in that country. But what we saw here was Julius Malema, black African male, drape the queer flag around him to make a statement. And my friend said, mainstream media failed to rise to the occasion. Yeah. You failed to recognize the importance of that particular moment. Yeah. Not too long after that moment, then the EFF invites Patrice Lumumba, and we know where he stands as far as queer rights are concerned, to come and do a speech. When he's challenged, he says, it makes debates exciting. What does that communicate to someone like you, who spent a lifetime, your very essence to us is about advocacy, is about fighting for queer rights. When you see it being used like that, does it feel like it's being trivialized for political point scoring? How do you make sense of what you see?
Well, it's a ticket. I think right now we started realizing, we realized there's a young, stupid male podcasters who were, and they were not first, but they successfully used our community as a ticket. Nobody knew who the hell they were until they did that. And I will not mention their names because we're not advertising them. And when they did that, and all of a sudden, it's like, oh my God, there's so much more engagement. And what you started seeing was a lot more, even people I thought were allies, jumping on the bandwagon, promoting their own work, using the LGBTI community as a ticket. That is a ticket for engagement. And so you want to score political points, this is what you do. I have found that if you are able to place my life, my very existence, as a point of debate, then you should not be calling yourself an ally. Because my existence is not up for debate. Because the minute you say that, you are literally saying someone can come and win the debate and say I should not be existing. Well, I am here. I exist. Our lives are not up for debate, should not be up for debate. And so that was a deep disappointment. But are we surprised? I mean, the political flip-flopping, this is not a first. This is not the first issue where you see the flip-flop. So it is about political scoring, and it is sad because it doesn't feel like there's a backbone there.
I want to move a little bit away from that and ask you about then your sense of where we are as a country in terms of dealing with queer rights specifically. It's really wonderful when you look at the country's constitution, the laws, everyone is protected, but you then see, maybe I'm not moving away from the party political space, because then you see small parties like Jama-ah that says when South Africa envisions a family, you must isolate certain people because that's what we feel. And these people are given an audience and given a platform. But on the ground, what people experience in suburbia is not the same as what we're seeing in our townships or our villages. I don't know if you're still keeping an eye on what's happening. I imagine you are. What is the image that you're seeing in terms of what young queer communities are going through across the country? What stories are you hearing? Again, it's wonderful that it's legislated, but I don't think that reflects really the true reality of what's happening in the country.
Right from beginning, right from the adoption of the Constitution, right from the adoption of that Bill of Rights, one of the things that some of us were saying on the ground were, it doesn't matter that we have constitutional protection if the people themselves don't know, one, that it exists, and two, where we cannot access it. And a lot of the time we've found that queer people cannot access the Constitution. It's not as easy to just say, oh, I'll take you to constitutional court. Even now, trying to sue anyone for any kind of discrimination based on their sexual orientation or gender identity or expression is a nightmare. It takes money, it takes effort. We don't have we're not a litigious society. It's not like we can just like walk down the road and somebody will hand you a pamphlet and say, want to sue someone? Like they would, for example, when we watch, the USA.
We see it all the time on US TV.
Right?
Yeah.
You see it on TV and you think, oh, we are able to do that. You're not. And you will be told over and over again, you need a few 100,000 rands to even just be able to say, I'm going to walk into a courtroom and sue someone. So every time somebody says, I'll sue you, we laugh because we know what that takes, right?
So what's our recourse?
And so what's happening on the ground is very, 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 very different to actually, this legislation that we supposedly have. And I say supposedly because it's being violated left, right, and center. You said something very key earlier. You said something about how South African media missed the moment. South African media is not just missing a moment. South African media, I find, is probably the most homophobic for a country that has a constitution that supposedly protects us. And I say that because how is it that the first and only non-binary child on television in South Africa was me at the age of 9? And there hasn't been any non-binary people, children, somebody like me is not reflected on South African TV today. That's deliberate erasure. There are 3, 4, 5 people who are said to be gay all over our media? That's it? As though that's all there will ever be. There's something wrong with that. We exist in so many different colors. Your non-binary, your trans, all your family members in all their different ways of being exist, and yet we do not see ourselves. We are not reflected in the media. I use this quote by Juno Diaz, who says, if you want to make a people a monster, if you want to make a monster out of a people, you remove a reflection of them on a cultural level so that they do not see themselves. Because then the myths continue and the lies about them can continue unabated. Right now, how Uganda managed to do what they have done is through a most successful propaganda campaign. A most successful. You speak to a regular Ugandan right now who is a homophobe and say, really, honestly, give me a logical reason why you think this law exists. They can't give you logic. They will give you the lies. But the lies have been successfully shared right throughout, not just their own country. It's gone up to Kenya, it's gone to Ghana, and now you have South Africans repeating the same lies.
Yeah, you see it a lot on social media. People feel emboldened. But how do we change it?
Exactly. And if they're emboldened on social media, don't think that they're not emboldened in real life.
How do we change it?
This right now is part of changing it. I appreciate every single one of these moments because this right now is part of changing it. We need allies more than we have ever needed them. People like you, all the different personalities, people who actually have a platform. We need you all more than we have ever needed you because right now we are so dehumanized that they don't hear us. Someone like me
still.
In 2023, nobody listens to anything I have to say because I have been, what do they say? Bought, paid for, recruited.
Oh, it's okay. I'm a white monopoly capital T
all of
girl.
Those things.
So I know how they shut us all down.
You know what I mean?
Understand.
So I should,
Yeah.
Here I am propagating for what exactly? So I need to come back to something else you said. They're talking about definition of family.
Saying that
Now,
South Africa's family life should not include the queer community.
Please look at Africa and look at the different types of families we've always had. Most of us were brought up by grands, aunts, moms, sisters, uncles. Our families were never really defined by a cis-het mom, dad, children. And that level of isolation of mom, dad, children is one of the reasons why there's such deep, deep loneliness and isolation, because that's not African. Ubuntu is about family being more than just the extension of mom, dad, two children. We've always had that. Whether
Children
you're
always
talking,
raised by communities,
completely. Polygamy has been part of our lives. When you look at all the other different types, there's been matriarchal families, there's been women-only led villages. I am sorry. What was Queen Mujaji? What was Nkhono Disi? What was General Mkabaika Jama? I am sorry. I am talking about South Africans who are being erased from history as though they never existed. And then you have the same homophobes who come back at us and say, oh, that does not mean that they were queer. What is the definition of queer? What is the definition of queer, if not Queen Mujaji? What was that? And so you're then telling us that the Americans can come over here and tell us, oh, family should mean this. That erases the entire African history, the way that we have always been, where family has been a very wide and different type of family that includes queerness.
I think earlier you kind of answered my question, when we spoke about the media's representation and the media's reflection on the queer community, because in essence, there is now more room where people like Jama-ah with their views are being given a platform. One media house picks up on it and we find ourselves having conversations. Even though the conversations we have is we are frowning upon, how dare you, in South Africa with the kind of constitution that we have. But you also have organizations like Contralesa that's been agitating to move particular clauses in the constitution, because that's a live document. That's an alive document. And anything can pretty much shift or change who and what we are if we're not guarded, if we're not careful. Do you think there are enough Bev Ditsies out and about in the country at the moment who are on guard, even the allies who are doing enough work to make sure that we are watching these areas, to make sure that the rights that have been put in our constitution, the guarantees, remain as they are?
Yes. I don't know if there will ever be enough, but there's a lot of people doing work. There's a lot of organizations doing the work. Iranti is doing the work. Access Chapter 2, Steve Litsike, they're doing the work. There's a lot of people doing a lot of work all over the country, from Triangle Project up in the Cape, that people, gender dynamics, people are doing work. What's not happening is that the media, once again, is not giving attention to that work. And our invisibility has to do with the fact that we are not being visibilized. And so Jama-ah will continue to have a bigger platform, even though they're a tiny new little party that in fact should be inconsequential in a country that is actually not even secular. How is religion coming in and trying to tell us how we should be in a democracy?
Yeah, they are given a platform. So you are seeing young Bev Ditsie.
There are many young people that are doing the work. And I am very fortunate and blessed to have the kinds of platforms that I do have. And so now I'm beginning to even take the platforms, because I realize that if nobody else is given platforms, then I should then take them, because we are under threat. Our existence is under threat. I mean, people having marches over rainbow colors on steps. How ridiculous.
Oh, yes, I saw that in Cape Town.
How ridiculous. Okay, so that's going to stop load shedding. That is going to stop the water crisis. That's going to stop the crime. That's going to stop the looting. That is what is going. You painting the steps. You're so focused on us that all these other things are going on around us. And no, that's not the focus. You're focusing on us.
With all of this in mind, do you think we also have an appetite? We will have an appetite for someone like, I just can't remember his name. I think it's the Umsunduzi mayor from the DA. Very young, quite dynamic. He's gay. For enough of those kind of leaders to also emerge and to get a following, to capture the imagination of parts of the community or the country, rather, not even community. Do we have room for that? Or because we are regressing towards conservatism, it'll be even harder for someone to come up. I mean, we are months away from an election, but that's the perfect kind of time if you have a different message to sell. Do you see room for that?
I see room for that, but again, it's going to take some courage, but it also going to have to take a shift in how the media is also approaching everything. I mean, it's very sad, when they talk about, media being bought, there's very little trust in South African media. I don't know how. I mean, I'm not necessarily a media practitioner as a documentary filmmaker. How are you going to deal with that? Because there's very little trust. Trust was eroded a long time ago, whether you're talking Bell Pottinger being able to buy media, or
we have a lot.
Even further back with what happened with Winnie Mandela, Stratcom and all of that. There is no trust in the media.
We grapple with it every single day. Our currency is actually credibility and trust. So every day, believe it or not,
and so
we have discussions about that, John.
They're bought.
How they're being dealt with will also be done to that.
You probably should be rich by now by just having me here.
I was saying to you earlier, I am called a white monopoly tea girl by everyone else who thinks that I'm out to get them. I don't even know what that even looks like, what that is, but I do understand where you're coming from. But you hedge a lot on media, the issue of representation, and I take that. It falls on media. But what else beyond media and where we fail as far as visibility is concerned? Is that really the only thing? Because it almost feels like it's one of the major hindrances to the queer community being seen and being understood. Well, not being seen, being understood better in our context in the country. What else though beyond media? I almost feel like we're just the bad guys, but I don't think it's just down to us. You've got maybe politicians. I always think politicians, but I think it's not just us.
Really? I mean, a lot of what we discuss, a lot of what comes up, what pops up, half the time has been reported on by media, hasn't it? I mean, a lot of our conversations, whether it is religious, whether it is a political party, whether it is on TV in entertainment, a lot of it ends up coming up as a headline somewhere. And that's where the conversation comes up. Look, a lot of our worlds also revolve around what's happening on social media and the symbiosis between what media picks up on social media and what social media picks up from media. And that's the lives that, and I know that this is a kind of narrow, it's very narrow to those of us who live on social media and who consume social media the way we do. My mom, on the other hand, still watches regular TV, SABC 1, 2, 3, ETV, and even though a lot of us don't anymore, the majority of the country still do. And that's where they hear their news, and that's where the conversations evolve, and that's where they pick up things, right?
That's fair. It's a very hurtful moment for me. Look, we constantly reflect on our roles. Yeah. I'll be honest and frank and say it's quite hurtful to see how much damage we also cause through our lenses, with our platforms, with our microphones. It's a very hard place for me.
Right now we have one of our favorite soccer parties in black and white. They kind of put out rainbow colors. Did you see that?
No, we can say them, pirates, yes.
It was wonderful to see. And then did you see how the cishet men were like,
but they're not platformed, they're not given the attention. They're on social media, but I don't know, I don't feel like we've given them enough attention on our end.
But I ask mom all the time, what are you seeing on TV? What's in the news? What are you consuming? Because she's become my barometer just in terms of, what is out there that I am not aware of. And that conversation is not happening.
You've given me a lot of food for thought. I'll take it. I am done, Dr. Bev. But as we part ways, just your sense of where we need to go and what we need to do as a country, as far as the protection of the queer community is concerned.
I think, having mentioned allies and allyship, right now, we need a lot more folk just coming out and just talking. I think we miss each other because we are so busy scoring points and wanting to win debates that we are no longer really just talking. And I'm finding far too many of our allies silent. I'm seeing some of the same allies being the ones that are vocal, and everybody else who claims to be allies, silent. This being Pride Month, especially in the month where Uganda signed this bill into law, wow, there should be campaign after campaign after campaign, shouldn't there? And there isn't.
Even our government is silent.
There isn't. And why? Why isn't there more? It can't just be Bev and Tshidi having this conversation, and Bev in the 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 different platforms, which have been wonderful. And I continue to say thank you to the allies, because if it wasn't for you, we would be just as invisible as we were pre-1990, pre that first Pride March.
So a lot of work still needs to be done. We need to continue to be vigilant and talk.
So much more. And we need to be talking and talking. Because the more we're having, and when I say talking, I don't mean debates. Because also, one of the reasons you don't see a lot of us on regular TV, and I say regular now, right? One of the reasons you don't see us on regular TV has to do with the fact that as soon as we realize that you're going to put me there with that Jama-ah person, where now I have to debate the Bible and debate the Holy Quran and debate my existence, we don't go. Because it's now not just, oh, you should not exist, your existence is a sin. I am here. Your book is on a whole other level that a lot of us don't even subscribe to anymore. Because of the hate in that book, we do not subscribe to the hate. And so bring us a whole different conversations. Let's talk. But I will not go and debate my existence. And so that's also one of the reasons you don't see us, is because now everything is sensational. And so we are not talking.
No, you should not cosplay your existence. Thank you so much chatting to us about the work that she does. You continue to do advocacy work, I imagine, in 2023.
I do a lot more film. I do a lot more behind the scenes. And of course, as a documentary, but also as a reality TV maker, a lot of my work has been to kind of try and stem the tide of the homophobe, and of the stereotyping and all of that. So my advocacy is not so much in front as much as it is behind the scenes. But
when you say as a TV maker, what are you involved in? When you say reality TV, which programs?
Tshidi, I think maybe
I have a feeling there's a program I really love that you might be involved in. That's what I'm now asking, yes.
No, but I think right now I'm more consulting than working as a director on reality TV, but I've directed shows from All You Need Is Love, Forgive and Forget. I've been on 5 seasons of Big Brother and Big Brother Africa. I've been on Survivor South Africa.
I thought you'd say you helped with Becoming, because I love it. That's all I wanted to know.
Yeah. No, I haven't.
Well, you have not been.
That would have been amazing.
I think it's incredible.
But
just before I let go, actually, let's speak about also the trans community, because we then speak about gay rights, but we don't necessarily also take in that part of the community. We kind of have forgotten that actually here are also people.
LGBTQA plus. Yes, we speak about everyone. One of the things I feel like our trans siblings can speak for themselves. And so a lot of the time when we've got allies who want to speak on behalf of, because I don't want to speak on behalf of my trans siblings. They can speak on behalf of themselves. But having said that, I do not understand transphobia. I do not understand, especially us in our own community, discriminating against our own people. That makes no sense to me. One's human rights is not better than another's human rights. We are all human beings who all deserve equal human rights. And yes, our trans siblings are also under attack in just as much as a big way. And yes, we all need to be very vigilant and be aware that our entire community is under threat.
All right, thank you so much.
Our entire community.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bev.
Thank you, Tshidi.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it from us. A special thank you to Lerato Herfela, Duduzile Masuku, and Tidiso Twala. For Eyewitness News, my name is Tshidi Madia.